Hands of the opposition parties.
Question number 4, Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. My question is to the Minister for Tertiary Education,
Order.
Skills and Employment.
Would the member like to start again?
I would, Mr Speaker. Thank you. My question is to the Minister for Tertiary Education, Skills and Employment. Does he agree with the Prime Minister, quote, "The number one thing New Zealanders need to rely on is that they have a job so they can provide for their families"? If so, how many New Zealanders are currently unemployed?
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, yes, I do agree with the Prime Minister's statement, and that's why the government is working very hard to provide the conditions for businesses to invest and grow jobs in the New Zealand economy. There are a number of ways to measure unemployment. For example, benefit numbers show the number of people on the unemployment benefit dropped by more than 13,000 from 67,000.
I'm having trouble hearing the answer to this part of the question.
For example, benefit numbers show the number of people on the unemployment benefit dropped by more than 13,000 from 67,000 in December 2010 to 53,700 in December 2012. Another indicator is the Household Labour Force Survey, the latest of which estimates 163,000 New Zealanders as unemployed, 10,000 fewer than the previous quarter. It's a drop in unemployment from 7.3 to 6.9%.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is it correct that there has been a net loss of 30,000 jobs since he became the Minister for Employment?
Mr Speaker,
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
No, I don't accept that number because actually the quarterly employment survey, the latest of which came out a couple of days before the Household Labour Force survey, shows a net increase of 54,000 new jobs across the country over the last 2 years.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is it correct, according to the Household Labour Force survey, that the Minister described as the standard internationally recognised measure of employment and unemployment tells us that there has been a net loss of 30,000 jobs since he became the Minister of Employment?
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, there's been an increase actually in the number of full-time jobs, but a decrease in the number of part-time jobs, according to the HLFS. But I think it's important to point out to the member, because he's new to the portfolio, that there are a range of measures to determine the health of the economy and creation of jobs. He mentions the Household Labour Force survey. The quarterly employment survey, of course, shows a net increase of 54,000 new jobs over the last 2 years. The numbers on the unemployment benefit are an important indicator of jobs in the New Zealand economy. PAYE taxes collected by the IRD is also important, and also jobs vacancies are important as well. And I note that the MB Job Online survey released last week showed school vacancies were up 8.5% on the same time last year.
Mr Speaker.
Point of order, Grant Robertson.
It was a very specific question, Mr Speaker. It included the idea that it was the Household Labour Force survey that was suggesting that there had been a net loss of 30,000 jobs, but the question
was a specific question.
We didn't get an answer.
And I invite the member to repeat that question.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. Is it correct that the Household Labour Force survey that the Minister has described as the standard internationally recognised measure of employment and unemployment tells us that there has been a net loss of 30,000 jobs since he became the Minister of Employment?
Mr
Honourable
Speaker,
Stephen Joyce.
as I said in my previous answer, I wasn't aware of the exact number, but I do know there's been a decline in part-time jobs and an increase in full-time jobs. I said I didn't know the exact answer, but I also point out to the member, and I think it was helpful, that there are a range of measures, and I'm happy to go through them again for the member, because there are different indicators of the numbers of jobs in the New Zealand economy.
Speaker.
Point of order, Grant Robertson.
To assist the Minister, I seek leave of the House to table a document prepared by the Parliamentary Library on the basis of the Household Labour Force survey that shows a drop of 30,000
Who was the document prepared
by
for?
the Parliamentary Library.
Who was it prepared for?
For me, Mr Speaker.
Leave is sought to table that document. Is there any objection to that? There is objection.
Supplementary question.
Supplementary question, Grant Robertson.
Is the Minister prepared to advocate for a change to monetary policy to give exporters a fair go and help New Zealanders find jobs so that they can feed their families?
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, no, although it's interesting to see the member going down the line of printing money. But the important thing is the member is on the one hand arguing for an artificial depreciation of the New Zealand dollar, On the other hand, Mr Parker will be along shortly arguing for closing the income gap between here and Australia, which of course an artificial reduction in the New Zealand dollar. Well,
point of order.
He sat down now, but no, that
Point
would
of
have been
order.
the point of order.
Point of order. Has the member got further supplementary?
question.
Then ask them.
Who is
supplementary
correct?
question.
Who is correct? The Prime Minister who said today that the high dollar, quote, even for a lot of manufacturers, it's a big help. Or Keith Whiteley from Hamilton Jet, Gordon Sullivan from AW Fraser, Mike Eggers from Pacific Helmets, and all the other manufacturers who have said that the high dollar and the government's monetary policy is strangling their business and stopping job growth.
Honourable Stephen Joyce.
Mr Speaker, the Prime Minister is correct, and I'll point out for the member, he needs to go and look at something called the TIN 100, which is the index of high-value manufacturing companies in New Zealand, which again he may not yet be aware of, which shows the companies that are doing very well. And different companies are struggling and different companies are doing very well. And the reality is, Mr Speaker, that companies gain also from the benefits of imports from input prices. No, Mr Robertson, it's pretty obvious that you're the one that knows nothing.
Question number 5, Dr. Russell Norman.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My question is to the